Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar on caregiver fatigue hosted by Rare Diseases for Movement Disorder Support. We're so glad that all of you can join us. Some of the faces that I can see, I even know. So I am, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Annemarie Ungerer, the founder director of MDS and the current chairperson. For those who may not be familiar with us, Movement Disorder Support is dedicated to providing education, resources, and a compassionate community for individuals affected by movement disorders, as well as their caregivers and their families. We understand the unique challenges that come with conditions like Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, dystonia, and other movement disorders. Our goal is to offer guidance, support, and practical solutions to improve the quality of life for both patients and caregivers. Caring for somebody with a movement disorder is a journey filled with love and dedication, as you all know, but it can also be physically and emotionally exhausting. That's why tonight's discussion on caregiver fatigue is so important. We'll explore what it is and how to recognize the signs, and most importantly, how to care for yourself while you're caring for others. There will be an opportunity at the end to ask questions, and I think in between you may use the chat function to also ask questions. And I'm now handing over to Elmarie Swanepoel, another of our MDS directors, to introduce our guest speaker for tonight.
Thanks, Annemarie. Hi, everyone. It's really great to see so many people joining our session tonight, and I can guarantee you are going to enjoy every minute of it. And I think there will be quite a few aha moments for you. I've had the privilege of attending a session that Kim and her husband Rob, who I'll introduce shortly, presented. And when I saw that, I said to Annemarie, this is something that we absolutely have to bring to this group. We have seen on the MDS support Facebook group, sorry, not Facebook, WhatsApp group, that a lot of the caregivers are struggling with fatigue, and you might actually not know what it entails, or that you are one of the people that can do with some extra help, some extra love, and especially loving yourself. So that's why it's such a privilege for us to introduce tonight to you Kim Ballantyne. Now, Kim is the founder of the Kim Ballantyne Consulting and Camber Coaching company, and she's been a consulting industrial psychologist since 1993 already. So she has lots and lots of experience in people development, especially leadership development and coaching. But you'll also see where the rest of it comes into with her experience that she has. In During COVID time, Kim also founded was a founding member of the Mental Wellness Initiative, and there she became involved in coaching frontline workers, and especially those people in helping professions like the medical practitioners and so on. And she was focusing on compassion fatigue, which I wasn't even familiar with the term. I know about caregiver fatigue, but then also moral injury and burnout and post-trauma growth. So I found that very, very interesting. So also an added advantage is that Kim has got her husband joining us tonight, and he's a physician, so also a specialist. So the two of them make up a really mean team because Kim brings the psychology part of it in, and Rob the medical side of the experience. So I think you will really benefit from having the two of them talking to us tonight. And also I want to mention that Kim is no stranger to serious health issues and caregiver experience as well. Unfortunately, she's been subjected to a number of serious illnesses, and it was due to her perseverance and her mindset that I think she's an absolute um, example of someone who's a survivor and celebrates victory. So every one of you are survivors because of the circumstances that you are in. So I'm sure from that you'll also understand where Kim is coming from. Also, as a caregiver, Kim recently took care of her father, who passed away sadly. So she knows exactly what it feels like to be a caregiver, and the emotional drain that it places on you, but also celebrating what you as a caregiver actually mean to the person who you're caring for. So with that, I'd love to introduce Kim and Rob. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's a real privilege to be here with all of you. And thank you for making the time to join online. You obviously had to say no to a whole lot of things to say yes to this evening. We've put together some slides, and I just want to share. Yeah. We're going to be looking predominantly at compassion fatigue, burnout and compassion fatigue, and utilizing a whole brain approach to it this evening. You are welcome to ask questions. You are welcome to stop and make a comment. The more engagement, the better for us. It's always difficult when there's not a live audience and you're looking at a computer screen. But we are going to be sharing about something that's very close to our own hearts. To be able to move the slide, and it's not moving. So in terms of caregiving, there are multiple roles that you meet and fulfill, and certainly the last while just being helping with my father, you're trying to work, you're trying to manage them, you're trying to assist with their care, their medication, hospital visits, whatever you need to be doing, and you really are running 2+ jobs. And I think people very often don't understand that in your role, you're definitely running more than, a single function. It's multiple roles, significant challenges, and with that, multiple pressures. So one of the questions I wanted to start with was, what are some of the challenges that you are facing as a carer? Does anyone want to maybe jump in on that? You're welcome to unmute. And you're welcome to, I can't see whose hand is up or anything. Anne-Marie, you'll have to help me.
Kim, I'm not seeing any hands either. So I'll just check for you as well. Guys, you can also send a chat message. I'll pick those up and pass on to Kim.
Okay, awesome. So then I'm going to go on to some of the factors that we have picked up, just chatting to people, going through the literature, being involved in some caring as well. So one of the factors with being the primary caregiver is that you are often the sole provider. And so there is that constant physical and emotional exhaustion. You having to very often be the breadwinner or work at the same time. And or if it's a couple, one of you working, one staying home, dealing with the index person or the child. And so physical and emotional exhaustion and just not getting a break from it. Balancing work and caregiving. I've just mentioned that you often have a job that you also have to manage, full-time care responsibilities as well, and that just increases the stress and fatigue that individuals face. Lack of time for self-care. This is a huge one. Because the demands are so big, there's very little time for your own well-being, your own hobbies, your own social interactions. And I think even handing over the individual that you're caring for to somebody else, I know with myself just felt the other people just can't do the same kind of job or wouldn't pay the same attention to detail, or wouldn't know the person as well as you do as a primary carer. Financial strain, cost of medical care, specialized equipment, loss of income, and massive financial pressures that come with this. And certainly chatting to Kelly from rare diseases, families struggle significantly with this. Emotional toll, very difficult watching someone decline. And I think before the session, we were just talking about how you grieve the loss of that person for years. And sometimes when that happens, it's almost a relief when you do leave them, but when they do leave, but you sit with the guilt that goes with that. And then I think also guilt of putting someone in care if you need to. Should we, shouldn't we do this? How do we handle this? And feeling very guilty often at doing that. Then just a physical strain where you are having to do a lot of the mobility tasks. I know my back is not great, and so having to move or roll or lift a patient, very difficult, and certainly puts pressure on you, leading to chronic pain or fatigue. Sleep deprivation, a huge one, having to constantly get up at night. And that also leads to social isolation because you're exhausted and then you have very little time to actually connect with other people. Lack of support systems. And I'm just so grateful that you have this movement disorder support group and that it's on WhatsApp because you can reach out to each other and people then can respond when they are able to. Then also the uncertainty about the future. The progressive nature of movement disorders, a lot of anxiety around long-term care, potentially worsening symptoms. And then what Anna-Marie was talking about earlier, that anticipatory grief, where you're anticipating that loss, you're anticipating the decline. And the guilt, or when you do, the person goes and sometimes feel huge relief at that having happened. Is there anything you want to add? And I think the big thing for me is that we run on empty. So we are trying to give when actually our tanks are massively, massively empty. Just our story, I was diagnosed at 40 with spasmodic dysphonia, which as I understand is a movement disorder. And with that, an intractable cough, massive laryngeal spasms. I had Botox injections into my vocal complex. I ended up eventually with tracheostomy, and I became sign language dependent for years. So we had two twins of 7, and Natalie was 10. And we had to try and raise those children, certainly me as a mother with a movement disorder and having to utilize sign and other mechanisms to communicate and to parent. It was exceptionally difficult. And people didn't understand this space at all. It was so interesting to me. A lot of people thought I had had a nervous breakdown, that it was psychologically driven, where we know it isn't. And so for me, it was very interesting being on that side of it. I think Rob, as a specialist physician, had a complex role. And I don't know if you want to discuss that, Robs, about assisting me, managing your patients and your practice, and the conflict that had for you.
So clearly, one wants to be involved with the care of your loved one, and you want to be able to take the responsibility and respond as one has opportunity. The complexity of the other responsibilities that we have to carry, carrying other people's lives, often alternatively generating income in order to support the disease process that your loved one is working through, of needing to manage the dynamics of that, the dynamics of your relationship, with a person who is unwell or is suffering from whatever the chronic disorder is. Those become hugely complex and do certainly lead to a significant degree of fatigue and extra stress. Life is stressful as it is, it's so to have to manage anything on top of our normal stress, I think, is hugely contributory to to added stress and added burnout potential. Yeah, it really does happen.
And I think on top of that, Rob, running an ICU, working in ICU, dealing with very complex patients, and then later COVID, also had first-hand experience of compassion fatigue and burnout. And so this is an area that really, I think we feel very strongly about and bringing awareness to and being able to speak into this space.
And certainly feel huge compassion towards people in this space because of exactly that, the burnout and the fatigue and the stress, etc., that we all have to deal with.
In terms of carer engagement, Roberts and Pickerel, they put together this basic metric, I guess, that looks at the degree of challenge that you're facing from low to very high, and then your capacity from low to high. And what one obviously wants is that we engaged with the individual we're dealing with, we have compassion, but we also maintain our energy and our ability to really top up our own emotional tank. When our capacity is very high and the challenge is low, we feel underutilized and we end up disengaging. But on the other hand, when the challenge is really high and our capacity decreases, we get completely overwhelmed and we then disengage. And we'll show you on the next slide how this links then to compassion fatigue and burnout. So what is the difference between stress, burnout, compassion fatigue, all of these terms that we talk about? So stress is really reactional. It's from over-engagement. And stress is not bad. We need stress to, some of us need stress to actually complete tasks if we're more the lastminute.com type of people. But it's from too much of something. So our emotions become overactive. It produces a sense of urgency. It can be positive, as I said, can lead to anxiety, and the damage is often physical. Burnout is also reactional, but you get that disengagement happening. It's when your capacity, when the demand on you exceeds your capacity. And so you work from that sense of just being empty. Often it's a gradual onset and it's cumulative. The emotions become blunted. It produces that sense of helplessness. It can lead to depression, and the damage is largely emotional. When you combine burnout with vicarious trauma, so vicarious trauma is when you are watching somebody else suffer. Primary trauma is when it's happening to me. Vicarious trauma is when I'm witnessing it. It's also when I'm hearing stories of other patients. It's when you are aware of other family members that might be struggling. So vicarious trauma in a medical context, it's where you may be involved in a resus and dealing with your ICU patients, but then you hear about the stories of other patients and other doctors and what they are struggling with. And that leads to the secondary or vicarious trauma. So when you have burnout with vicarious trauma, you get compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is relational. It's not reactional, so it's relational. It's the consequence of caring so deeply for the people that we are looking after. And it's when we are exposed to the trauma of others and our emotional expenditure. So what we're giving out emotionally, it exceeds our ability to recover. That's why I said it's this feeling of just running on empty. There's nothing left inside. Often it's a very sudden onset. I remember dealing with a doctor who came to see me, and she said she stood at the bed of a patient. She thought she was doing so well, stood at the bed of this patient, and she was just, I just wish I could get rid of you. There's nothing inside that wants to even help anymore. And that's the sudden onset of it. It's psychological and it is also physical. So the whole sense of compassion fatigue is that running on empty, and when your emotional expenditure completely exceeds your ability to recover. So it's the stress resulting from helping others or wanting to help people who are experiencing trauma or suffering. And I think all of you are in that situation. Stress and burnout plus secondary trauma leads to compassion fatigue and that running on empty. So that's just the summary slide. So recap, it's that state of emotional exhaustion that can occur as a result of intense empathetic involvement with people who are in distress. So the people you're dealing with, you've loved, you know, you care for them. And so seeing them in that constant state of suffering absolutely depletes one. And your emotional expenditure exceeding your ability to recover, and you run on empty. Is there something you would like to add?
I think just that the switch over from stress and burnout into compassion fatigue, Kim speaks about the vicarious trauma, and it is our emotional engagement with those people, with those stories, that leads to internalizing their trauma and their pain and their suffering, that then impacts us at an emotional and physical level, and will result in us developing compassion fatigue, and then disengaging, as Kim indicated, in the axes of load and capacity. It's as we become overloaded because our capacity is reduced because of that vicarious caring.
And vicarious training and seeing it. Huge. So what are the stages? Often we come into the space with hope. I know certainly for me, when I was diagnosed, that I didn't even know what chronic was. And you'll have to go and get our book to understand how this story panned out. It's called Hot Tea and Apricots. It's a memoir of loss and hope. And I'm just so grateful I sit in this place now of being able to speak again. But in any caring situation, in nursing, in medicine, one has that sense of enthusiasm and hope. We're here for the long haul. But then often that irritability, that hopelessness settles in. Obviously, fatigue. You're fatigued, nights are long, having to get up, not being able to sleep, just the exhaustion of the relentlessness of what you're doing, and then going through the withdrawal and isolating. And I think that isolation and withdrawal is dangerous because that leads to the depression. When we say quitting, this is looking at the profession. If you're a professional carer, often wanting to just quit. When you are a family member, how do you quit? And so it can either lead to severe depression. Sometimes we see people wanting to commit suicide, or we have to go through what we call renewal and maturation. In other words, what are the mechanisms we can then put in place to actually assist us in our journey and dealing with an individual that we are caring for.
So two things to say on the slide. The first is that a lack of support is a huge risk factor when we come into this with enthusiasm and hope, and there's a lack of support for us in our own caring roles and in our own caring environment, that lead to escalation of this process. The second thing that I wanted to say is just I think it's really important for anyone who's involved in caring professions, or simply in caring for somebody who is suffering from chronic illness, is to actually just be aware of these processes. And as Kim goes through all of these sides, just to be evaluating whether there's anything that is resonating with you as she goes through this process.
Certainly for Rob and I, in terms of our own relationship, 2 years into our process, we were in a very difficult place because I was no longer the woman he had married, and he was longing for a woman who wasn't coming back, and I couldn't be who he was longing for. And I think we came very close to potentially losing our relationship. We sat at Monte Casino and we made some significant shifts and decisions in terms of how we would manage our relationship going forward. And I'm so grateful for that. So why am I even sharing that? Having to care for someone in this space really impacts relationship. And there can be fallout with that as well.
And the sooner we're able to identify that and address it. So one thing to identify it, it's another thing to leave it to fester. And the most important way of dealing with it, in fact, is to address it, acknowledge it, and then to look at ways in which we were able to work through this process. And that will obviously have been critical to Kim and my relationship going forward.
So I think I hear this so often: compassion fatigue and burnout, not me. And I think the concept of burnout resonates very poorly with individuals because there's almost that undercurrent of failure, or people feel, if I'm labeled as having burnout or compassion fatigue, it suggests I've failed, I haven't had enough resourcefulness, I haven't been resilient. And that actually is not the case. I think that some of the most resilient people can really struggle in this area. And so the question then is, who is at risk? And I want you to just look at these questions. And I'm going to read them as well, just in case you aren't able to see the screen, or you are you're listening off your phone. And I want you just to count how many of these 9 questions are true for you. My personal concerns commonly intrude on my role. Family members, friends, colleagues, they seem to lack understanding of what I'm going through. I find even small changes enormously draining. We almost get change fatigued. I don't know another word for it, but that just a small change and a small alteration, and I'm just done. I don't have capacity to handle it. The 4th one, I can't seem to recover quickly after association with daily trauma or a troubling event. I just feel like I'm not recovering, or I just go numb and blunted. Association with any type of traumatic or troubling events affect me very deeply. Other people's stress affects me deeply. I've lost my sense of hopefulness. I feel vulnerable all the time. I feel overwhelmed by unfinished personal business. So just add up on your fingers how many truths you've had. So if you've had anything 4 and above, you are at risk of compassion fatigue. And it's very easy for you to hit that 4 and above mark on this.
In other words, if any of these resonate with you, if you identify with any of those are an indication that that's been your experience, and that is a really significant warning sign for you.
Yeah, in terms of compassion fatigue. So anything 4 out of 9 and above, you are at risk of compassion fatigue. And so what are the symptoms of it? And we're going to look at the 4 intelligences. We're going to look at our cognition, our mental capacity, how we show up there, how it manifests emotionally, physically, and then spiritually. And we'll briefly unpack each one of those areas. So mentally, we can end up being workaholics, perfectionistic, controlling, spacing out at times due to that mental fatigue. And spacing out can also be Netflix binging. When I know for myself, when I was so stressed looking after my dad, coming in late and trying to catch up on work-related stuff, checking emails, making sure other, client appointments were done, and then being so exhausted, I knew I had to sleep, but I couldn't switch off, and B, all I wanted to do was just binge on a series, and that just exhausts one even more. But that's that whole, I just want to space out. Difficulty concentrating, often very forgetful, And remember, when you are in that fight, flight, freeze, your frontal lobe just shuts down. So you find it very difficult to remember detail, to concentrate, very forgetful. Self-doubt, having flashbacks, denying that this is happening. And then, as I said earlier, that I just can't switch off. Do you want to add anything? Emotionally, that absolute roller coaster from overwhelm, feeling anxious, guilty. And I think especially in the carer space, a lot of guilt can play havoc. Rage at times because you feel so overwhelmed and helpless. Self-contempt, and I think that often comes from, is there nothing more I could do? Sometimes the thoughts that you have and just feeling really angry about those. Decreased empathy, depleted, irritable, isolation, withdrawal, disengagement. And then often numbing, just feeling absolutely numb, blunted emotionally. Physically, we can either have no appetite or we eat too much. And then the lack of sleep, ailments, headaches, weight loss, procrastination, increased errors in what we're doing. And then that decrease in our productivity. Self-medicating to try and cope, and leading obviously to the addiction space. Chronic physical and mental exhaustion. And then in a relationship that can often lead to sexual issues. Spiritually, for a lot of people, just a crisis of meaning, lots of questioning in this space, can also be a loss of purpose, lack of satisfaction, questioning religious beliefs, questioning your role in the profession if you're a professional carer, and sometimes questioning your role in your caring if you are a family member as well. Do you want to add? So at work, I'm aware a lot of you are, you are a primary carer. Some of you are working and caring, maybe splitting that role. But at work, we sit with disengagement. We can end up with chronic absenteeism, increased levels of conflict between us and our colleagues, aggressive staffing behaviors, lack of trust, colleagues feeling overwhelmed or unable to finish their work. So if you're part of a group that are carers, you can also see that happening, certainly in nursing, when we've dealt with nursing or in medicine, seeing colleagues feeling so overwhelmed and unable to finish, and then double guessing what they're doing. Resistance to any change, because we just said you're running on empty, so change becomes overwhelming. General apathy towards your job or your profession, and increased errors. So in looking at how we respond as individuals, I'm going to look at what we call a whole brain model. So in terms of how we think, we show up in 4 different manners. We have the very rational people. Those are the people that like to analyze. They are logical and critical and realistic. They love the numbers. They are very good working with money and making the balance sheets speak to each other properly. And they love to know how things work. They're complex problem solvers. That versus your big picture experimental individuals who like to know the beginning from the end. They are happy to break rules. They can be playful. They speculate. They are the visionaries. Then you get the safekeeping people, the greens. They like to take preventative action. They dot the I's, cross the T's, and I hope I got that right. Yep, I did. They establish procedures, get things done. They're reliable, neat, timely, like things done according to plan. And then you've got the feeling selves. You've got people that are sensitive. They like to touch. They're supportive. They're expressive, emotional, talk. They're the feelers. So each of us has the capacity to show up in one or more of these quadrants. And who we are impacts how we are going to respond to compassion, fatigue, and burnout. So this is a little bit more lighthearted, but I really want you to, as we're going through, look at who am I? And because of that, I respond to stress and burnout in a certain way. And for people who are very blue and possibly green, you may be experiencing it, but people may not be seeing it as such. And certainly if you're working in organizations or in a movement with other support structures or psychologists or social workers or interfacing with carers, you need to be very, very aware of how our differences impact how different we are actually impacts how we respond to compassion fatigue and burnout. And someone who's working exceptionally hard, paying attention to detail, taking on more and more, that actually may be a burnout response. And we are missing it. We just think that they are extremely effective.
So I think it's worth just pausing for a moment here. Really what Kim is communicating is that all of us have various components of these selves. So a rational self, a safekeeping self, a feeling self, an experimental self. But most of us operate in one or other of the quadrants predominantly. And what Kim is suggesting is that we should each identify which of these quadrants we fit most into, because as she's going to go on to shortly, dependent on which quadrant we tend to resonate mostly with or tend to behave predominantly in, will determine to some extent the way that we respond to stress and burnout and caring and all of those kind of things. So just briefly, in terms of each of those quadrants, again, the rational self is people who tend to focus on the numbers, etc., on the facts, possibly less integrated with human interaction, whereas the people in the red quadrant are people who feel deeply. So it's a feeling self, feel deeply and feel very deeply with people who are suffering and people that we may be caring with. So you will understand that different quadrants will relate differently to the load that's placed on them and the way that they perform in a caring role.
And it's also very interesting if you've got a child in a relationship that's needing extensive care, you often find that the husband and wife or the partners have very different profiles. So you may have a husband who is very logical and analytical. He wants the facts, he wants the numbers, he wants to know what the treatment protocol is. He wants to know all those kind of details. You may have a mom who is way more feeling. So they approach the problem from completely different perspectives, and it can also lead to conflict. You may have a mom who's very warm and caring, emotional, and also attention to detail, that green self, safekeeping self. So she's going to end up carrying a lot of the load, and that's going to put a lot of stress and strain in the relationship as well.
Yeah, important to be aware of those differences and its impact within your relationship, particularly when it comes to caring. Just by illustration, dealing with a couple who have marked relationship or conflict at this stage, largely which has arisen as a result of their role in caring within their family. With him being more in a blue quadrant, really just his response to it is, well, this is what it is and we're going to get on with it. Whereas she, with a very feeling component, is finding herself overwhelmed with the practicality of integrating and being the person who is having to do and make everything happen around her on behalf of her family members that are needing the care.
And I think the other thing is when we stress, this can shift. So I have red, yellow, and blue, and when I'm very stressed, I withdraw from my feeling part. I just withdraw relationally, and I become very logical, almost cold. So for me, then it becomes all about the task and just getting it done. So for us understanding this about each other, when Rob sees me becoming exceptionally task-focused, he knows that that is actually a stress response. When Rob goes very yellow and starts wanting to escape into the Congo onto a mission station, I know he is extremely stressed and has gone very yellow. And then I become very logical. Give me the numbers. Who's going to support us? How are we going to deal with, the rebel forces? So just interesting to see how stress impacts how we think and how we show up from a brain profile.
So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into yourself and that you're able to carry that through into the exercise coming up.
So just to go through it. So the rational self, that blue, they analyze, quantify, they're logical, they're critical, they're realistic, they like the numbers, they love to know how things work. Math, science, decision-making, it's difficult to argue with the blue. They have very strong problem-solving abilities. They solve logically. They don't want to know about the emotional side of a thing. And so when when you're dealing with a blue, this is when they're dealing with a medical issue, they're going to look for what are the facts. This is how we're going to deal with it, as Rob said. So the blues, I laugh a lot at the blues. It's in God we trust. Everything else must have data. They want the data. And I work in corporates and I use these slides. And for the blue, our employees are our greatest asset. And I mean, this is tongue in cheek, but I say, let's sell them. The blues, just bottom line. All things considered, I think our marriage has been cost effective. I mean, that's a typical blue. And she's saying, well, when last did you hold my hand? What about the safekeeping self, the greens? They take that preventative action. They want the established procedures. They want to get things done. So when they are dealing with a patient, they'll have the time charts. They'll have all the dosages of medication. They'll have everything set out. It's got to be run according to that schedule. They're very reliable and organized. They're neat. They're timely. They have got plans in place. They are outstanding when it comes to detail. But the problem with the greens is they will also take on more and more and more. And if you ask them to take a break, there's nobody else that can look after this person as well as I can. That's their underlying belief. So in terms of decision-making, they are conservative, procedural. They approach problems very practically. And you can look through the rest there. This is a typical green. I wish I had a green more often in my life, but everything ordered, everything neat, everything tidy. And shame, this one, honestly, Helen, you are so organized. She's so organized. She's even got her husband stuck up there in that little box where he belongs. So, so here there's these two little dogs. It's always sit, stay, and heal. Never think or innovate or be yourself. And that's a typical green. So when it comes to the feeling self, the reds, they're sensitive, they teach, they're supportive, they're expressive, they love team, they feel very deeply, and they talk, some of them talk a lot, some don't, but they are definitely the feelers. And your sort of, I guess at work, at work, there would be the social workers, teachers, what am I?
Story.
Yes,
Psychologist.
Your psychologist. Sorry, I hit a blank there. Your psychologist, also people that are in sales and marketing, but they consider others in everything they're doing, very intuitive. They pick up on the nonverbal and the interpersonal cues. So they will pick up so much more of what is going on, but often respond to that. And so you can imagine how easy it is for them to end up running on empty. On a red, with a red 2, if you betray a red, it's very difficult to regain that trust. Here is just in a business context, you probably got a vice president here who is an absolute blue, and you've got this person congratulating them on a report and hugging the gizzards out of them, and the poor blue is probably as stiff as a board, and the red just can't get enough touch. The reds also can be, if that's a typical desk, photographs of family all over the place, just very connected. Trust doesn't come with a refill. They need trust. And once it's gone, you are going to struggle to get it back from a red. And if you do, the relationship is not necessarily the way it was before. And so just be aware of that as well. In the yellow experimental quadrant, these are the big picture thinkers. They are spontaneous, they're curious. This person is going to look at every permutation of a diagnosis. They're going to look at what other options could it be. They're going to look at all sorts of different experimental treatments that are coming up. They will look at every permutation. And if you look at work, these are self-employed entrepreneurs, designers, advertisers, marketing, sales, etc. And they are also very inventive, they're intuitive, they are big picture thinkers. So you can imagine when they are carers, they don't like to be boxed, so they may find it difficult to follow strict protocols, and they'll always be looking for, isn't there something different? Can we not approach this differently? This is a typical yellow. Everyone completely confused, don't know how the yellow got to where they are. What on earth is he doing? And he's sitting there, well, what the heck am I doing? They can get very lost in their own thought. You see clutter, I see an environment that encourages the random juxtaposition of disparate elements for the potential generation of creativity born out of chaos. That is a typical yellow. So what are the triggers in terms of these different quadrants of compassion fatigue? So a trigger for the blues, remember the analysts, the logical problem solvers, they are going to tend to overanalyze. When I say client, it will be the patient or it will be the index person they're dealing with. They will overanalyze that person's problem. They will be overwhelmed by the complexity of the issue. They want time out, but they're not going to take it. They're going to put their heads down and keep working. People and emotional responses exhaust them, and they don't acknowledge the emotional toll that caring takes on them, and that leads to fatigue. And they also are perfectionistic, and they put self-imposed pressures on themselves. So these are all the types of things that will lead to them struggling with compassion fatigue. So that working longer and harder and longer hours, you've got to ask whether this person is actually sitting with a level of burnout. In terms of the greens, remember I said those are the perfectionists, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. They are just unable to say no. They just can't say no. So they tend to take on more. They have an excessive workload. And when there is a lack of structure, they really, really struggle. They focus on the task and completing it, and they don't give enough time to self-care. So one of the big triggers is they are so task focused that they don't give themselves time to actually reflect, to pull away from the actual issue and to care for themselves. They often think that not enough is being done. We could be doing more, we should be doing more, we should do this, aren't able to take that weekend off or even put someone into respite care so that they can recover. And they really, really battle when the patient or someone that's looking after an individual is not adhering to the program that's been set up. So you can imagine if you've got a carer who's very green, who's handed over to someone who's maybe yellow or red, and that protocol is not adhered to, it will absolutely trigger them. And potentially they're not going to try that again. Compassion fatigue happens with the reds when they identify with and absorb the pain and the crisis and the anxiety that the person that they're caring for is going through. They are severely and significantly impacted by vicarious trauma. They take on the trauma of the other. And being there for everyone, they will be the person who's just, I'm there for everyone, but they don't care for themselves. So leaving themselves absolutely drained. And they often really struggle with guilt. So thinking, I'm not giving enough. and just feeling absolutely guilty. So they're on empty. They know they're on empty, but they just keep giving because of that sense of guilt. And then lastly, the yellows, they constantly look for new approaches. There's got to be a different way. There's got to be a different treatment protocol somewhere out there. And they lack the discipline of self-care, and they also struggle with putting boundaries in place. They get very frustrated with protocols and rules, and they'll tend to break those. And they struggle when people don't grasp the bigger picture. And when you can't see the solution, or when they run into obstacles, they tend to overextend themselves. So as soon as they hit an obstacle or they can't see a solution, they're going to go back in that headspace, turn that Rubik's Cube, look for different permutations. So a lot of it in the headspace. And often that looking for solutions, looking for different ideas, coming up with different things that may be actually an indication that they're moving into burnout. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, that's good.
So when you're in denial, on the blue, they just say, I need to cope. This is nonsense. I'm just a little bit tired. The greens say, I'll rest later. It's got to be done. And I'm the best person suited to do it. So they just will not take that time off. The greens, I know I've got to watch myself. So there is that awareness. I mean, the red, sorry, I know I've got to watch myself, but it's not about me now. It's actually about the other person, and completely shut off from what's going on inside of them. There are people who need help desperately, and so I'm going to actually step in and help. The yellows, stress, burnout, compassion, fatigue, whatever. There's got to be something else that we can try or do. So I hope this is making sense for you, and I hope you can identify who you potentially are. I don't know if anyone's brave enough to say who you are. Maybe when we come to the end, we can own up. So in denial, what happens is we just erode our cope even further, or we use harmful coping mechanisms. PTSD often becomes the new normal for us, and we just actually drown in what we're dealing with. Or we've got to move into acknowledgement, which is get help, see the gift in the storm that we're in, focus on post-trauma growth, and prepare ourselves as leaders in the space. And when I say this, this is really dealing with people who are in the caring space. Are you able to change the narrative around this and actually deal with it differently? So I guess it's time to be honest and to acknowledge, for the yellows, I need to face what's going on inside of me, and I need to stop detaching, because those yellows detach into their headspace. A new idea is actually not going to fix me. I'm burnt out, or I'm sitting with compassion fatigue, and I actually have to face it. The blues, I don't always need to cope. It's not nonsense. I am exhausted. I am burnt out. I am struggling with compassion fatigue. And for a blue, that's extremely difficult to actually acknowledge. The reds, I have to watch myself. It is also about me now, because if I completely burn out, who's actually going to step up into the space? I can't help others when I'm actually running on empty. And for the greens, I have to rest. I need to rest and pause. I have to let go, and I have to let others help. Very difficult for a green, but it's time to acknowledge those things in each quadrant. So what does emotional self-care actually look like? So I think as a caregiver, emotionally knowing that you are not alone. And I think it's wonderful that you have the WhatsApp group, because you're in touch with other people who are either patients in touch with patients, or carers in touch with other carers. And you're able to almost normalize what you're going through. Other people in this situation are experiencing the same thing. I'm not alone in this. I think also naming the difficulty doesn't negate your love and commitment to care. You can actually hold those two truths together. They can coexist. So I think being able to say this is exceptionally hard doesn't mean you don't love the person or that you're not committed. to looking after them. But sometimes we have to acknowledge how difficult it actually is. I think giving yourself grace while trying to be all things to all people, being honest about those feelings of guilt at times and sometimes shame, and then connecting emotionally with your spiritual community, whether it's your church, whether it's your synagogue, wherever you're going for your spiritual base, connecting in with that. And there's so many options post-COVID to connect online as well. Then being able to practice prayer or journaling and meditation, and having the courage to normalize breaks and prioritize your wellness. I think this is very difficult in this space where taking a break is just almost impossible. But saying, actually, I have to, because if I don't, there's going to be nothing left of me. And so my question is, what does that look like for you? Which of these emotional self-cares do you think, sure, okay, I could maybe tackle that one? Or, I haven't had a break in forever. And so based on what Kim said, I actually have to prioritize that. And a break can be, it can be putting headphones on and listening to music. It can be going for a walk. It can be asking someone else to come in for a half an hour while you get time out. Do you want to say?
No, I think as Kim says, acknowledging where we are is what it's about, and then finding resources in order to meet the need and meet the opportunity that we identify that we need to attend to.
In terms of accessing emotional support, certainly utilize as much online support as you can. Something like tonight, I think, is very valuable, and I'm sure you do a number of these. Your WhatsApp support groups, other online groups, or just a call to a friend. I know how incredible my friends have been, and I think after a while you feel people get exhausted and they don't have capacity for what you're going through, or they certainly don't understand. But I think for me, what has been amazing has been friends who've said, I don't understand. How can I help you? What do you need? I had one friend who said to me, you know what? I will phone you every second week. I'll just have communion online with you. I'm a Christian, and that was very helpful for me. Or just saying, I'm going to phone at X time. If you're able to pick up the phone, if you can't, that's fine. People don't always know how to support us. And so being able to educate them as well, I think is really good. So as you go through, just think of some of the things you could do in terms of educating your own support groups or your environment. Professional help, certainly there are social workers. Sometimes, especially if we sit with depression, anxiety and depression, we need to get medical help. Go and see a psychologist or a doctor. And medication, you're in a war. I remember when I struggled with depression, Rob just said to me, Kim, you're in a massive war. Pick up a weapon, which happens to be a little tablet to help your brain stabilize right now. And there's no shame in that. You also have rare diseases counselors. And I wanted to also pick up on LIRA. LIRA is, if you're working in an organization or you have formal employment, please find out if they are linked to LIRA. And LIRA has free counseling. They have family support groups. They do family therapy. They have amazing facilities available. So please look into that as well. And then, as I said, please just watch for depression in yourself.
I think just to, again, stress the importance, firstly, of identifying what support opportunities you do have, and then not to be ashamed of accessing those, not to find reasons not to access them, but rather to find reasons to access the support that is available.
And I think too, one of our barriers to access is that we're just feeling so empty, that actually logging on or connecting is it just feels like too much effort. But I think very often once we've made that commitment to do it, it actually feeds us. And so just be aware of that, that when you're sitting with compassion fatigue or burnout, it just feels like another thing I've got to do. And I'm on empty anyway. But often just connecting actually helps to fill that emotional tank. I think cognitively, a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Work versus caregiving. If you are working and caregiving, the primary caregiver, you are running 2 jobs. And I think what COVID has done for us, it has been a real gift, has been remote work. And we are able to very often do, work from home. So having that honest conversation with your employer about the amount of remote work you might need. Sometimes we need to get away from home and go into work just to give ourselves respite. And so be aware of that balance. And I've put here family responsibility leave. You're all going to say to me that's gone within the first month. But just do remember that you can access that. Then access any support services through work, which I've indicated you can through LIRA. And then, if at all possible, some kind of activity that engages you, whatever that is, but look to things that actually feed you as well. In terms of the physical self-care, just taking those breaks. And as I said, watch social media binging. And I know that was a problem for me, just wanting to hit social media when I knew I should be sleeping, when I should be trying to exercise. And if you're able to exercise or even get a static bicycle, anything like that is really helpful. And then for those of you that are carers or are a family member doing the primary care, just watch those correct lifting techniques to reduce any of your own injuries. Prioritizing your own well-being, and that's really so critical. And I know I really struggled with that, with caring for my dad. I just felt I found it so difficult to do that. I lost weight, I struggled with sleep. But my question to you is, what does that look like for you? Does it look like a walk or music or just finding alone time? Find things that are going to actually help lift your own sense of well-being. And then access respite care. I was really interested to find out at RareX, the Rare Diseases Conference, how that hospice offers respite care. You can contact them in your area and actually ask if they will take someone for a weekend or a night and give you that break. And I know some hospices are really full, but maybe there's a hospice that maybe you're in Pretoria, your hospices are full. Would you be able to look at something in Johannesburg? So respite care is available. And then obviously we can look at friends. I think some of us are reticent to put that burden on a friend or to reach out, or we felt we've asked already. But I think often people want to help, they just don't know how, and we need to communicate what that looks like. I know for Rob that when I was so ill, I think Rob was incredibly grateful for friends who took over so many of the roles. They were really...
I think it's valuable that we had an entire support group. I'm sure you're familiar with the term that it takes a village to raise a kid. It often takes a community to support us when we're going through these processes. I think the other thing to say is that the distractions, the activities, by distraction I mean activities that we're able to absolutely engage in, that will give us an opportunity to divorce ourselves from the stress and the load of the caring that we're doing, are absolutely essential. I had a group of friends, and certainly I had 1 or 2 specific friends who would take me rock climbing, and I'd be able to, while Kim was very ill and I was trying to run a practice, that was essential to take time away. And for me, it was rock climbing that that just had me absolutely engaged, so that there was no chance that I would be thinking of anything other than that activity, and that would give me an opportunity to develop resilience that would enable me to continue with the caring both at home and at work.
Yeah, so I think just one does feel guilty. One feels exceptionally guilty, but at the end of the day, you completely burnt out and compassion fatigued is going to impact the person that you're caring for as well as yourself significantly. So just offering these and saying what resonates with you, what small thing can you do that would make a difference.
Yeah, and just to say that if you are self-caring, if you're caring for yourself, your ability to care for others is so much greater. If you are running on empty, if you are burnt out, your capacity to afford meaningful care, and meaningful care being probably predominantly the emotional component to that care. Physical component, we kind of force ourselves and drive ourselves, but the emotional component becomes overwhelming. We withdraw back again to that disengagement in that graph that Kim showed earlier.
So I know for me, sorry, Rob and I are sitting in the Cape at the moment, and I think we have got sinuses and runny noses and all sorts of things. We're normally in Joburg, so if we're sniffing, I feel very embarrassed. Sorry about that. We're both sitting with stuffy noses. But I know when I was so ill, Rob, it was hard for me. It was difficult for me having Rob go. I felt scared. I didn't want to be alone. And yet I knew he often took the children. I knew that when he had that break, he was so much more present for me when he got back. And so that was a conversation we had to have, and then facilitated that. And if I was struggling, I could ask a friend to come or find someone that would sit with me. And so I think sometimes that is a conversation that needs to be had if the person is able to have that with you. So just in wrapping up, and I do want a bit of time for discussion, I want to ask you, what is the one thing that you can actually commit to today? And maybe drop it into the chat. What is the one thing that you can commit to today?
In terms of self-care.
In terms of your own self-care. Just being aware that maybe I am struggling with burnout or compassion fatigue. Wow, I have hidden in X, Y, and Z. I've taken on more and more work because that's where I feel I can cope. Those blues, they often want a sense of control, and work is the one thing they can control. Or if you're sitting on the red and just realizing, wow, I'm emotionally strung out. I've actually become irritable. I'm ratty. I'm whatever. You'll identify where you are sitting at. And my question is, in terms of your own self-care, in terms of filling your own emotional and physical and spiritual and psychological tank, what is the one thing that you can actually commit to today? And then actually follow through on that. Just in closing, from Nost, he says, taking care of myself doesn't mean me first. It means me too. And I think that is really critical, because I think as carers, we put ourselves on the back burner. We put the patient or the index person front and center, and it can be very costly. And so taking care of myself, even if that is in short increments of time, doesn't mean me first. It simply means me too. To stop sharing. Has it stopped sharing?
It
Are we
has.
back?
Thank you, Kim. Yes,
Okay.
you're back.
Good. I'm back. Awesome. Marie, I'm going to hand over to you and Anna-Marie. I'm sure you were watching the chat. I don't know if there's anything else you want to draw out, or any questions people have, or any comments they want to make.
Kim, I'm going to quickly address the two comments that came through, the two chats. Donna Foreman, and I'm not sure, Donna, if you would like to actually speak up about this. But Donna said, my son is severely handicapped and he lives in a home. I have constant guilt that he does not live with us. My youngest son is at school with me and I struggle to juggle all my responsibilities. So Donna, you're welcome to chat about that. You can unmute yourself.
Hi there, Kim and Rob. It's so lovely to meet you both, even though it's online. Please forgive me.
Donna, I would love you to put your camera on if you can.
I can, but I'm looking very bedraggled. So if you're willing to see me in a very bedraggled state, then that is absolutely fine. I will do so.
Very bedraggled is wonderful.
It's real.
It's called real. You should have seen us running after grandchildren. Our daughter's had surgery, so we have moved on to Cape to help look after her for a while, and we have been running after kids all afternoon. So.
Well, you look a whole lot less bedraggled than I feel. So
you look lovely.
Thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to say it's so wonderful to put faces and personalities, because I've been very fortunate to be reading your book at the moment. Actually on my nightstand at the moment. So I'm just absolutely loving your book. But without going into huge amounts of detail, it's just what you've said this evening has resonated with me so much. My eldest son lives in a home. He's a severe epileptic. He has something they call SCN8A epilepsy. And sorry, I'm trying to decide whether to put my earphones on or not. But basically, from a very young age, I realized that we would not be able to care for him at home because he is physically able but cognitively very impaired. And so his ability to understand danger was it still isn't present. So he'll be 16 next month. But from a very young age, he would, be able to turn on taps throughout the house or turn on the stove or whatever have you. So it's just been a very difficult journey. And I think the balance in terms of making sure he's cared for, as well as my youngest son, who is fortunately very normal, but trying to meet both of their needs equally and maintain an income and work full time has been a massive challenge.
Well done on identifying the challenges, elucidating them, and walking a road which has been hugely challenging, I'm sure, of actually being able to balance what is best for the whole team. And it certainly does sound as though you have made some critical decisions, which, if one looks at the whole team, I'm sure enables you to meet everyone's needs to the best degree that one is able to. And I think that's a beautiful illustration for other people in a similar position, is exactly that the challenge is to balance the needs of everybody, rather than one person at the expense of others and often at the expense of yourself.
100%. I think that's what's been the single biggest challenge. My son was very small when, we realized that he needed to be in care. And that was hugely difficult because there are places in South Africa for older children or young adults who need permanent care, but for youngsters, it's quite tricky unless they're in a wheelchair. So it has been an enormous challenge, but it's wonderful to have the support and to know that you're part of a community. And obviously Kelly, from a very early stage, has been there in terms of support as well as many others. So thank you so much for everything you're doing to support people in these situations, and myself. I really appreciate it.
Again, I'm sure you're able to reflect again for other people in the audience, the fact that your sense of contribution that you're able to give to your eldest son in the contact that you have with him, because you have some reserved resources, is rewarding and is meaningful.
100%. I don't see him as often as I like, because life is just so busy and I'm busy working and raising my youngest son. But certainly when I do see my older son and I spend time with him, that time is absolutely meaningful. And it's taken a huge leap of faith to realize that actually others can care for him better than I can.
Well done.
Well done. It's obviously, that's been quite a journey you've been on to get the place where you're at, and I just, wow, Donna. We have a young girl who gave birth to a little child who had who had a big bleed. Hey?
She had a massive cerebrovascular event that destroyed half of this child's brain before she was born.
And I think one of the big issues is just no facility for a child like that. When they're little, she's got to be 18 before they can put her into any kind of facility. And so the stress on the mom has been absolutely extreme. And 100%. So I think being able to get to the point where you have is really remarkable. Well done. Well done to your whole team.
Thank you. That's so kind. And thank you both for your strength and sharing your story.
It's a pleasure. Please let me know how the book, I should send you a box of Kleenex, hey? But let me reach out to me. Okay.
I will. Thank you, Kim.
I'd love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. That was really inspirational, and I'm sure you've made a big difference to many people on the call as well, because I do know that many of them struggle with the situation that you've gone through and are having to deal with those so difficult decisions. So thank you so much for sharing. That was really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, we've got another 15 minutes or so. Tandeka, you also sent gave us a chat. You were saying that your mic is disabled. I believe it has been corrected now. Would you like to chat about your message?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Let me show my face as I see it is the norm. Yeah, lovely to be able to join this platform today. I have a daughter that was diagnosed with an extremely rare cerebral vascular disease called moya moya. And I'm mom, divorced, and she started having stroke when she was 8 years old. She's now 15, and she has a younger brother who is now 12 years old. And the guilt on my side has been on not paying as much attention as I feel I should to my son, because of the enormity of the work that revolves my daughter being.
Okay, we've lost Tandeka.
I'm sorry.
Tandeka, sorry, can you put your camera off? We aren't able to see you, and sometimes it does make it difficult with the connectivity.
The website has actually, pardon?
Hey, Tandeka, are you okay?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fine. I can see that this is really painful.
Yeah, so my son has had to grow up much faster and literally parent himself on most cases, like his homework, his schoolwork, he's the one that's responsible for reminding me of things that needs to be done for his school. Just yesterday, I forgot to go collect his report from school, and he reminded me at 4 o'clock to say, "Mommy, you need to go to my school." And fortunately, I was able to go there because it was still before 5:30. So it's been a tough, lonely journey for me since 2020, when my daughter had the major stroke, and then brain surgery, and also the grief of losing a daughter that I had before the stroke, because her personality changed, her mannerisms changed. She lost all ability of speaking our home language, only speaks English, was right-handed, now left-handed, you know, and there is no time to actually take a pause and say, okay, I think on the quadrant, like kinship, I'm on there, everything for me goes to heart, everything goes straight to emotions, and like that's a lonely, very, very journey to care for a child that is. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, thank you, Tandeka. It was quite difficult, but I think the gist of what I heard was just feeling that on a number of levels, just of grief and loss. Firstly, that you lost the daughter that you knew and loved, and post-stroke, she's very different, not even being able to speak your own home language.
Yes.
And so that, and then compounded with that, the amount of care that has to go into her, feeling that your son is having to parent himself, and he's almost having to show up as the adult in terms of reminding you for things and things like that. So have I understood that correctly?
Yes, correct.
Sure, it's a really difficult situation. I don't know if anyone else is in a similar situation.
I just want to say, Tandeka, thank you for elucidating beautifully the conflicts that you live with and that you exist with, and for being vulnerable in terms of the emotion and the pain that generates for you. Again, well done on elucidating it. Well done on walking the road. I don't know that any of us can really be fully empathetic with what you experience, and even try to speak into it. But the one thing that I would say, again, just simply from our own experience with our own children and the road that we would have walked as a family, is that we've got to guard against, and I really hope that we can guard against, almost feeling sorry for the other children or for the other child, and for what life has offered them. Because I use the word offered, because although there often is an expense that they pay, I think there is opportunity that can be utilized of what they are going through to build in resilience to them and prepare them for life in a different way from what most of us have the opportunity of being prepared for. So I think we do need to utilize the opportunity of trying to focus on some of the benefit that comes our way through adversity, and trust that will be met for your youngest son.
Thank you.
But it doesn't take
Thank
away
you
the
so
pain
much.
and the sensitivity that you experience. So I really hope that my reply hasn't seemed glib, and that's not the intention behind it, rather to acknowledge the difficulty and the pain that you experience. well done on elucidating it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It does provide me with a little bit of consolation, and comfort in knowing. And I think God has really helped me through my son for him to be such a responsible young boy, because he almost like could see that, okay, mom is stretched between school drop-offs, between going to my sister's speech therapy, occupational therapy, and all these different therapies that my sister goes to. I'm actually going to have to be more responsible. I've had no complaints from the school. I've had no issues with the teachers, with him when he has homework. He gets back from school, he sits on his desk and he just gets the work done. And sometimes when things are slacking on his side, the guilt comes in that still, if I was maybe a little bit more supportive to him, maybe he would do much better than he is doing currently, because he's still a young boy. He's in primary school.
So really beautiful perspectives again that you have and are able to carry with you, and again just to draw attention to the conflict that one exists in, because although he is so resilient at this point and responding so beautifully to the responsibility, just to be aware that one maintains touch with him and continues to really give him as much attention as you're able to, and as much awareness of the conflict that he himself will be living with. But well done. Sound like you're an amazing mother.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we've run out of time. We've literally got 2 minutes left, and there were still so many comments that people wanted to make, and information and experiences that they were wanting to share. So it's really a pity that we've come to the end of this session. But Kim and Rob, I really want to say a huge thank you to the two of you for the way in which you have led this session. The fact that you were really sharing personal experiences all along, I think made a huge difference to a lot of our participants here. And Anita said it so well. She said, "Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. It is so inspiring. The content shared was really insightful and so relatable and resonated with me." And I think that goes for everyone on this group. So I want to say thank you for opening yourselves up as well, and to show the rest of us that it's okay to feel the way that you feel. And that's the message I really want to leave with our participants, to say, our caregivers, you are amazing. You are doing the best possible job that you are able to.
Absolutely.
If you don't feel that way at any point in time, hey, you're allowed to do that, to feel that way. You feel what you feel. And I think that is where, Kim, where you also brought the perspective of the caregiver fatigue. And I want to encourage the group as well to go and have a look at that little assessment. And I'll send you the details, guys, so you can go through that. I found that very insightful as well. So Kim, Rob, you are a formidable team. And I couldn't have thought of a better way of bringing across the message than the way that you've done it. So I want to really thank you on behalf of all of the participants and all of the caregivers, for the way in which you delivered it. So just to the participants as well, please, I want to ask you to be kind to yourself. Think about yourselves for a change. I really liked, Kim, your last slide was also, as Elise said, it was really insightful the way that you had made it a simple point, so impactful. And participants, caregivers, fill your tank up. You can't look after and care for other people if you are running on rock bottom. So please take time out. Make the difficult call to say to someone, I need you to come and sit with my loved one for half an hour, or just to have a cup of tea somewhere, or whatever the case might be. So please look after yourselves. You are doing an amazing job, and we've seen that on the groups. So just in closing, I'm not sure if you guys saw, if there's anyone that would like to join the caregiver group on WhatsApp. Please feel free to contact Anna Marie. Her number is 0833 040671. It is on the chat, but let me repeat it one more time. 0833 040671. So participants, and I really hope that you have enjoyed the session as much as I have. I hope that it was meaningful. I hope that you take something out of it, and leaving you with a thought of be good to yourself so you can be good to others. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you had a good evening. You have the rest of your evening will be good. My tongue's getting all twisted. So thank you for joining us. And again, Kim and Rob, thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
It was a privilege being with you all.
Bye.